Nearly 6 years ago, Kacey Musgraves dropped her seminal country pop classic, Golden Hour. Golden Hour itself was a sleeper hit that ended up shocking everyone and taking Album of the Year at the 2019 Grammys. With Musgraves' upcoming Deeper Well, I wanted to revisit this magical record, which has become one of my personal all-time favorite albums. We're going to discuss the album's origins, the singles, and the deep cuts, as well as the record's legacy. Before Sunset. To really discuss Golden Hour, we have to discuss Kacey Musgraves' early career. Born in Golden, Texas, Musgraves started songwriting at the age of 8. A prodigy, she learned the mandolin at 12 and was even invited to sing for then-President George W. Bush's Black Tie and Boots inaugural ball. She would go on to compete on Nashville Star after high school, placing 7th in the competition, record her own albums before signing on to Triple Pop, an indie label, in 2008. She got real traction when she joined Lady Antebellum on tour in 2012. She would eventually sign with Mercury Nashville that year and drop Merry Go Round, her breakout single, which would go on to win her a Grammy for Best Country Song. Merry Go Round was a sharp song that set her up as a witty social commentator on life in the heartland and small towns. It would hit 63 on the charts and was followed up by her first album, Same Trailer, Different Park, which peaked at 2 and won Best Country Album at the Grammys. That album was a sharp songwriting showcase that steered towards saying something rather than charting well. Follow Your Arrow, which remains her highest charting song on the Hot 100 at 60, was a big hit for her. It was the sweet song about staying true to yourself, and even had a brave line about supporting the gay community in there, which was huge in 2013. It's still huge now. The country music community loved her though. She won Song of the Year at the CMAs for that song. Musgraves would end up touring with Katy Perry for the Prismatic Tour, which was the first time I got to see her live. She'd also follow up the record with Pageant Material, which suffered from the sophomore slump. It only had 2 singles, Biscuits, which some felt was a retread of Follow Your Arrow, and Dime Store Cowgirl. Critically, it was adored, but it suffered again commercially and garnered only 1 Best Country Album nod, which it lost. In 2016, she would begin to date her future ex-husband, Rustin Kelly, before getting engaged by the end of that year. Musgraves would also release her first ever Christmas record, A Very Kacey Christmas, before entering a dormant period. Creating Golden Hour. Aiming to change her sound, Musgraves co-produced this record with Daniel Toshian and Ian Fitchuk, who'd go on to co-produce her subsequent records as well. Toshian had been a protege of T-Bone Burnett and even had a band, The Silver Seas, while Fitchuk was a very skilled multi-instrumentalist. The three came together to really foster a unique soundscape and texture together. Musgraves co-wrote and co-produced all tracks on what would become Golden Hour. She recorded much of the album in the earlier parts of 2017. This album marked a departure for Musgraves, who had been really known as a snarky observationalist. She had shifted gears instead, writing more straightforward songs about broader topics like romance. Musgraves noted that she had more love songs around this time, noting that she'd never really been one to feel love. Inspired by her marriage to Kelly, she said that this album was about being in a golden hour of her life, hence its more optimistic tone and title. The album itself had been inspired by trippier sounds. She marked Neil Young, Sade, and the Bee Gees as inspiration. Fun fact, this album was actually recorded in a studio over fellow country legend Sheryl Crow's stable. Well, parts of it at least. One thing she noted was a theme about the record being about the masks that everyone wears and how those masks are a part of us. Being in a golden hour allows these masks to come together and show her as a complete person. The album's title seems to be a play on Musgraves' own hometown of Golden, Texas, and the literal time of day when the sun sets, giving the world a golden cast. Musgraves noted that it was inspired by seeing a total solar eclipse. She said that it was a majestic moment to relish in the beauty of the world. She also said that times may be dark, but she wanted to put out something with more love and positivity and pretty colors. One major influence on the record that Kacey would reveal later on is how LSD had actually helped her compose songs like Mother and Slow Burn, stating that while it's not for everyone, she did have positive effects. The album itself is pretty iconic, taken by Musgraves' sister in their hometown. Musgraves' sister said that Kacey wanted to use the paper fan and that they'd gone out into a field with just sky and got the shot. She hadn't gotten the vision until she saw the shot. One thing that I noted when I saw Deeper Well's cover was that there was a similar composition, but instead of a fan, there's a flower showing Kacey's face, and now instead of the sky, there's the earth. which makes me think that they're going to be sister records. To promote Golden Hour, Kacey dropped both Space Cowboy and Butterflies in February 2018. Both songs really marked a departure from her previous work, Space Cowboy being a wistful country ballad about letting a partner go, while Butterflies was more of a charming country pop song with a disco feel. Butterflies in particular sees Musgraves shed this lyrical cynicism that she's always had for warm fuzzy feelings of meeting somebody and falling in love. Both of these songs would go on to be nominated for Grammys and win. The legacy of Golden Hour. Golden Hour would drop at the end of March to universal acclaim. It ties her debut for her highest Metacritic, but with more reviews. It was loved for its warmth and candor, many noting how beautiful the record was, and praised its genre-bending nature. It even was rated #1 by a BBC poll amongst 35 different music reviewers for the year 2018. Commercially, it debuted at a modest #4 with only 49,000 units sold. None of its singles really charted on the Hot 100, though they did find success on the country charts. The fact that it was a low-key release made it seem like an afterthought at the Grammys. Ironically enough, it would go on to win every category it was nominated in, both Country Album of the Year and Album of the Year proper. Butterflies and Space Cowboy would win their respective categories of Best Country Solo Performance and Best Country Song. Album of the Year in particular was a surprise because she'd been up against Post Malone, the Black Panther soundtrack, Brandi Carlile, Janelle Monáe, her, Cardi B, and Drake at his commercial peak. Yet it broke through mainly on the laurels of its critical acclaim and its distinct, unique sound. Musgraves' win would lead her to become more of a household name, where she'd go on to contribute for the Frozen 2 soundtrack, do a Christmas show for Amazon which had both Troye Sivan and Lana Del Rey in it. In 2020, Musgraves would divorce Kelly, feature on a remix of Troye Sivan's Easy, and begin work on her follow-up divorce record, Starcross, which didn't match the same critical or commercial success Golden Hour did, despite it being more or less a darker sequel. And now we're going to discuss the album itself. Golden Hour is a powerful record that encompasses the multitudes of life. It touches on the beauty of living, finding joy and meaning in everything from loneliness to love to nature. Musgrave bears all elements of her soul across a wide soundscape that feels both cohesive yet distinct. The production team really integrates the core warmth of acoustic strings with the cool, serene nature of synths in a way that I don't think anyone else has done quite the same so far. Musgrave's smooth, pitch-perfect vocals glide down perfectly. Personally, it's a skipless record that's arranged very artfully, but also works in shuffle somehow. One facet of the record I really love is the appreciation for nature and the world at large, which you really feel throughout the record. Slow Burn for its far-reaching scope, Oh What a World for being a thrilling exploration of the planet itself, and the titular track. If Earth Day was a real holiday that we had off from school and work, this would be the record that we'd all be listening to. Another element of the record I really love is the romance of it. I think that this is one of the most straightforward and earnest love records of the modern age. Butterflies won its Best Country Solo Performance Grammy for a reason. It really captures the spectrums of being in love with a lean towards the positive. The title track is one of the most romantic love letters ever put to song. It's never saccharine, there's an acknowledgement of the complexity of romance. Songs like Love is a Wild Thing and Happy and Sad mention the push and pull and anxiety that romance brings. Yet still, the spirit of the record posits that the journey itself is the story, the destination is irrelevant. There's a strong emphasis on self-love on the record, but not in the traditional empowering way. It's very much about embracing oneself in tough times. Mother, one of my favorite deep cuts, touches on just missing her mom and venting. Wonder Woman speaks to giving her partner boundaries and going I'm human too. High Horse speaks to standing up to snooty folks who look down on you and protecting your own vibes. And the closer, Rainbow, doubles as an ode to her queer fans and to the resilience one must have to find beauty in things. Golden Hour, much like its namesake, feels like a once-in-a-lifetime sort of phenomenon. It's a sunset you can't really ever have again beyond memory because it's really the day that surrounds it that gives it meaning. Looking back on that day through photos or memories still reminds you that better days are ahead and good times were had. Slow Burn is a perfect opener. It feels like a subversion of her autobiographical takedowns of small towns. She's appreciating her life and the slower pace that she's living at. It's a spiritual journey. She's alright with a slow burn, whether it's romance or just living her life, and the self-awareness is pretty insane. Texas is hot, I Could Be Cold is like a meta take on her own previous writing style. The second verse touches on how things are winding down in Tennessee, but how in Beijing the day's just starting. Like, contrast is a huge theme of the record. Lonely Weekend is a confessional track that speaks to being lonely, but also realizing that that's just a temporary situation. The people that she loves will eventually return to her life, but for now it's just a lonely weekend. Verse 2 is very universal in the way that it really resonated with me during the lockdown. That feeling of FOMO and just wishing you had something to do. The chorus is just very elegant writing. The bridge being a reassuring admission that it's okay to be lonely sometimes, and then the repetition of sometimes to reiterate that loneliness does end. Butterflies is probably her most romantic track ever, written 3 weeks after meeting Kelly. This one's about the beginning of a love. The first verse speaks to a listless nature of life, before that first chorus speaks to how nice it is to have a love that actually builds you up. This love has reminded her what it feels like to fly, because the old ones had weighed her down a bit. The second verse always gets me because it's directly connected to that metaphor of being a chrysalis and having a love take you out of that. I use the song as a litmus test as to whether or not I like someone actually. It's like one of those songs like Delicate where like if you don't think of them when you hear that song, don't waste your time. Oh What a World is one of her best tracks. It's really like Daft Punk meets Kacey. The electronic effects contrast this beautiful ode to nature. I love the futurism of the vocoder mixed with the banjo. Oh What a World, I Don't Want to Leave is a very simple sentiment, but it's very touching. Each of the verses really touch on the real things that she sings about in that elegant pre-chorus. The way that the strings punctuate the chorus, it's entangling, almost like a warm embrace. It's hypnotic and trippy. The outro repeats, and then there is you, which makes the song a romantic song. She's celebrating this magical world and says to her lover, I get to share this with you. You are part of the wonder of the world. Mother is a brilliant short little interlude about missing her mother, brought on by a text that she got while she was on LSD. You can really feel this sense of weight and gratitude to the track. She sings about these feelings that she's having, her regrets of distance, and seeing herself outside of her body as a woman who's missing her mom. Love is a Wild Thing is a cute country ballad about the complications of love and the joy that it brings. Again, I really love the duality on this record. There's an acoustic backbone to every track, coupled with ornamentation or cohabitation of electric elements. Here we have an electric and acoustic guitar. The verses are conversational, bleeding to a clean pre-chorus, yet again, a trademark of the songwriting on this record. Even if you lose it, it will find you, before a wise chorus. That again ties love to nature on an emotional level. A river trying to find the ocean, flowers in the concrete, even the nightbird can't hold back love. The bridge speaks to the vulnerability that she has, that she's not scared of this anymore. But later songs on the record reveal that she actually is. Space Cowboy is an emotional centerpiece of the record. It stands in sharp contrast to the more romantic songs, instead being a breakup song. The wordplay is ingenious in that it is space, cowboy. She said that she was inspired by something her horse trainer said when a stallion had just burst through the gate. There's no point in fencing him in. If he wants to go, he can ride away. Sunsets Fade and Love Does Too speaks to this idea that golden hour will eventually fade. The imagery of a cowboy riding off into the sunset is often seen as triumphant, but here it's a tragedy that she's just not going to stop. Happy and Sad is a personal favorite of mine, the song being about being in a state of joy and despair because you're nervous when you're having the time of your life. It speaks to this very real anxiety that the moment is passing. She's never felt so high, but she knows that whatever comes up must come down, and it almost feels prophetic in a tragic way, but it's a very real feeling. Anyone who's had to grow up guarded feels this need to be prepared for the worst. The bridge colors in that she's comfortable in the fall and gray skies, but it's truly scary when everything's perfect because she knows that rain is coming her way. It's a beautiful song that again speaks to the duality and temporary nature of a golden hour. Velvet Elvis is a cute song, but it's never been my favorite, but the instrumental behind it and the good vibes really justify its inclusion. It's poetic and playful, and more or less why I think she got included on the Elvis soundtrack years years later. Wonder Woman feels most like a return to her cheekier earlier work. This one's about telling her man that she's literally not Wonder Woman. She can't lasso love out of this man. She's only human and she doesn't need Superman. She just needs this place to land. Verse 2 really is clever in that she points out how heavy those gold bracelets Wonder Woman wears and how scary it is to do what she does. Again, the bridges on this album are pretty underrated because they are simple. They're not ornamented, they're not detailed, but the sentiment of "you don't know how to fly, that's okay, neither do I," it grounds the song so well. It's a very sweet version of the sarcasm that she did in previous records. High Horse is the real takedown song on the record, and the one that most people will remember. It's this catchy disco wash country track with a banjo riff that's just really an earworm. Each verse is so funny, from comparing this loser to a wannabe John Wayne shooting down everybody to a player who thinks he's winning first place. The transition from the melody in the pre-chorus to the riffs to that earworm of a chorus again, I still think this is her most effective piece of country pop. Each part of the song is catchy, the rise and fall of her voice, the clean bridge, probably one of the finest songs that she's ever done. She's even tried to emulate it on Breadwinner, which felt like a natural sequel to this on Starcrossed. But again, this one's a timeless classic. The title track feels like the emotional conclusion to the romance portion of the record. It's a very simple love letter to her then husband. It speaks to the way that this love makes her feel. The chorus tells it all, that he's her golden hour, the color of her sky, everything's gonna be alright. The bridge is probably one of the sweetest things I've heard. The lines about how looking through their eyes makes all that she sees before look like paradise. I feel like that's the kind of sentiment that you get when you're really in love with someone. The instrumental feels very old-timey and cinematic, so you could imagine this playing while you're driving into the sunset with the love of your life at the end of your movie. The album closer, Rainbow, is the oldest written song on the record. It's a meaningful ode to keeping your head up in a storm. It speaks to staying above the rising waterline. The chorus, again, is about rain and wind blowing and holding on tight, and she says that there's always a rainbow over the storm. It's an ode to her loyal queer following, and the imagery of tying the boat and taking off your coat because everything's going to be alright. It feels like a warm hug. It encapsulates like this record being a safe space and harbor for herself and for her listeners. It's definitely an all-time track of hers. And one of the strongest closings I've heard on a record, a country record, in some time. Overall, Golden Hour really is a timeless, skipless record about the beauty of life, nature, and love itself. Musgraves explores different avenues: yearning, heartbreak, admiration, defiance. There's a universal anxiety present. Is it all too good to be true? Perhaps, but enjoying the view is what matters the most, because the worst thing you can do on Golden Hour is miss it. It's a 10 out of 10 record for me, and I think I'll be listening to this album decades from now, like decades after I've closed down this channel. Like, that's how good it is. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I cannot wait to review Deeper Well when it comes out in the coming weeks. Stay tuned for that. I have more videos on the way. A quick shout out to my members and my new member, Paula. Thank you for joining. And thank you to my subscribers. Just subscribing alone does a lot for this channel. Feel free to like and comment your favorite track off the record. Let me know. I love interacting with you guys in the comment section. I try to answer every single comment. And I guess I'll see you next video. If you'll have me, I guess.